take a tour. Actually, I should mention the Salem Ferry because it's right here. So the Salem Ferry is a very cool ferry because it takes you to Salem. Salem is really the best place to be in October. I mean, obviously Boston's great too, but if you like Halloween, Salem's the place to be. I went to school there and I lived there for 8 years, so I'm a little bit biased, but Salem is really fun. Just want to mention that because the ferry's right here. But welcome aboard. Before we get started, a couple things to let you know. First of all, this is a U.S. Coast Guard certified ship. That means that there are life jackets on board for each and every one of you. That's what I mean. By the way, like I said before, most of what I'm going to talk about today is going to be to the right side of the boat. So as long as you can see to the right side, you'll be good. So welcome aboard, everyone, on this absolutely gorgeous day. We have just pulled out of Long Wharf. Long Wharf was built in 1710. It is the oldest continuously used wharf in the country. This is also where the British soldiers evacuated from at the end of the Revolutionary War in defeat for the very last time on March 17, 1776. Coincidentally, March 17th is also St. Patrick's Day, and we have a lot of Irish people in Boston. So they throw a big party, big parade on that day for those two reasons. It's always a fun day to be in the city. Now, Long Wharf originally was a third of a mile long. Clearly, it's not that long anymore. That's because man-made land has been filled in on either side of the wharf. By the way, 3/4 of Boston is on man-made land. That is a lot of land, if you think about it. In fact, from where this boat is right now, all of the land that you can see from every single side of no taxation without representation. This is one of the sparks of the American Revolutionary War. I'll also very briefly point out that brick building with the wave of glass in front that we just passed to the left of the Northern Avenue Bridge. This is the John Joseph Bothley Federal Courthouse. That wave of glass is there to represent a wave of justice coming over the city. A number of famous people were tried at this courthouse. Whitey Bulger, famous South Boston gangster, was put on trial here. And if anyone remembers the college admissions scandal that happened a couple of years ago, Lori Loughlin was also put on trial here as well. She had more paparazzi than Whitey Bulger did. Now, everything towards the right side of the boat right now is South Boston. South Boston used to be called South Bay because it is entirely man-made land. More specifically, we're passing the Innovation District, pretty new district. I will point out the shorter glass building that's in front of the building that says Goodwin. This is the Institute of Contemporary Art, the second most visited art museum in Boston. That building was built in 2006, and until 2013, that was the tallest building in the district. So that's going to tell you how new this whole district really is. Oh, and there we are, in that mirror glass building. That's us going by. They built that a couple of years ago. That's fun to see. Another cool thing about that shorter glass building, in fact, you can see some people walking around in there. Every other year, Red Bull sponsors their annual cliff diving competition. So they bring in professional divers from all over the world, and they'll dive off of that shorter glass building 90 feet into the water. I don't know why anyone would ever want to do that, but they do it. They did it in June of this year. I got to see it. It was absolutely insane. Which is one of the richest, most profitable fishing banks in the world. At its heyday, the South Boston Fishing Pier would handle about 330 million pounds of fish a year. That was around the 1970s. Fishing industry has definitely declined a bit, but they're still out there every day. They're catching haddock and cod, and of course we have boats around here catching the jewel of Boston Harbor, lobster. Those delicious lobster rolls that you must have before you leave the city. It's very important. I'll also point out this white tent here. This is the Leader Bank Pavilion. It is a concert venue in Boston. So this year we had Josh Groban, Maren Morris, we had the Goo Goo Dolls, we had Norah Jones, Alicia Keys, a lot of big names playing at this beautiful pavilion. Now behind this pavilion, so closer to us, you're going to see a dock that has a very rusty front gate. And if we were a little bit closer and a little bit higher, you'd be able to see that the inside of the dock is hollow. This is called a dry dock. This is how they work on large ships that we have in our city. In the last tour, we had a bunch of cruise ship people. Okay, yeah, when they come in, they like to go on a boat. I guess we can't get them away from boats, but this is the Adventure of the Seas. And then behind that is the Celebrity Summit. So the Adventure of the Seas, I believe the capacity is 3,800, has 15 decks. So that's quite a giant cruise ship. So the cruise ships used to come in a little bit further into the main part of the city at Commonwealth Pier. They don't do that anymore because now there are tunnels that run underneath the water. Inside, you'll see a fort. This fort is situated on Castle Island. Castle Island used to be an island, but it was filled in with man-made land connecting it to South Boston. There used to be a castle here. It was called the Castle William, but it was destroyed by the British in 1776 after having lost the war. The fort that you see here today is called the Fort Independence. It was fortified in 1845. It was manned during both World Wars. Never saw any action. However, at one point, something terrible happened here at the Fort Independence that inspired a pretty famous literary work. So at one point, there were two lieutenants stationed here at the Fort Independence, Lieutenant Green, Lieutenant Massey. They were having a game of cards on a Christmas Eve night. Something got out of hand. One of them accused the other one of cheating. They got in an argument and decided to settle this with a duel. In this duel, Lieutenant Green ended up killing Lieutenant Massey. Now, Lieutenant Green was not very well liked among his men. They were pretty mad that he had killed their friend. So they got him drunk one night. They took him down to the basement of the Fort Independence. They chained him to the wall. They sealed him in brick and mortar, and they left him there to die. What a horrible, terrible way to go. Why would I tell you this story? Well, a couple years later, Edgar Allan Poe was stationed here. He heard this story and he wrote the Cask of Amontillado, which is one of his most famous literary works. A very famous short story of his, also about a man being entombed alive, and he got the inspiration for that story right here. But as you can see, despite the horror today, this is a beautiful place to walk around. It's connected to the mainland today, and usually on weekends you can tour the fort. So there's a beach behind here, there's a nice restaurant. This is a good place to visit. So we have a windy city. I've been out here on extremely windy days where it's just absolutely insane. You put a bunch of trash on an island in a windy city, like what do you think is going to happen? It's going to blow off into the harbor. That's logic. And that's what happened. This harbor was full of trash. It was awful. People of Boston decided to fix this. They decided that everyone will be able to see it. I'm just going to start talking about it now. This is the Bunker Hill Monument. It commemorates the Battle of Bunker Hill. The Battle of Bunker Hill didn't happen on Bunker Hill. It was supposed to. The Patriot General told his men to go to Bunker Hill. They accidentally went to Breed's Hill, and it's still called the Battle of Bunker Hill. Nobody really knows why. It might just be a mistake by a map maker. Even more odd, the Bunker Hill Monument actually sits on Breed's Hill where the battle happened. It's this weird mistake in history. Now, this so-called Battle of Bunker Hill was one of the first major battles of the Revolution. During that battle, the Patriot General told his men, don't fire till you can see the whites of their eyes. You may have heard of that famous phrase. He told them that because they were running out of ammunition very quickly and they needed to save it. So we have now arrived at the Charlestown Navy Yard. We have two very historic ships. This battle, the HMS Guerriere noticed that her cannonballs were bouncing off the Constitution. That caused someone to exclaim, huzzah, her sides are made of iron. Her sides are not actually made out of iron, but it did give her the nickname Old Ironsides. Her sides are made out of 22-inch thick Georgia live oak. She sank the HMS Guerriere in only 35 minutes, and at the end of the battle, she had 19 cannonballs stuck in her side, so that will tell you how strong she is. She has fought in 33 battles. She has not lost one. In order to maintain her active duty status, she must travel at least 1 nautical mile per year. So every 4th of July, they'll take her out. She'll travel down to the Fort Independence, where we turned around. She'll basically do the same route that we do. And she will fire a 21-gun salute from her very own cannons to honor her. Very cool to see that on the 4th of July. She is available for touring Wednesdays through Sundays, so she is available for touring today and tomorrow. So definitely get on board her because she's a beautiful ship. So now I'm passing the Leonard P. Zaker. You may have seen the award-winning film Glory, starring Denzel Washington, Morgan Freeman. That'll tell you a little bit more about that remarkable part of American history. I'll also point out the walkway that's hugging these piers. This is the Boston Harbor Walk. It's quite a easily constructed walk. It was built to bring Bostonians back to their roots, back to their waterfront. The entire walk is 47 miles long and counting, very long. That's because there's a new law in place. If you're going to build out onto the water, you have to include part of the Boston Harbor Walk, because Bostonians should always be able to see their waterfront, especially now that it's clean. Now, there are two places around here where there is no harbor walk. One's where the Coast Guard is for security reasons. But the second is Union Wharf, which we are passing right now. This is the wharf with the 3-story condos on top, kind of underneath the skyline, slightly to the right. So these condos are built in the 1960s, so it's been grandfathered in. There's no walk here. However, these condos, they're 3 stories. They have 3 bedrooms. They come with 2 parking spaces. That's got to be a dream to have 2 parking spaces in the middle of Boston. And if anyone's loving the city so much, you're thinking, well, just move here. Buy one of these. It's only going to cost you $400. So now we are passing a beautiful view of Boston skyline. This is a pretty picture, by the way. I will mention the clock tower right in the middle. This is the Custom House Tower. It was Boston's very first skyscraper, fully constructed in 1914. Today it's a Marriott hotel. Now, interesting tidbit about the Custom House Tower. There are 4 clocks on top of the tower, and none of them are really going to tell you the same time. This has to do with the wind. We have a windy city, as I've said. I know you can't feel it now, but I promise you we have a windy city. When it gets really windy, the wind will move the hands of the clock. So you can see time speed up on one side and maybe even time slow down on the other. Bostonians lovingly call it the 4-faced lion. Now, while we're here, I want to tell one of my favorite stories about Boston history. This is something that happened at the North End. A story that I don't always get a chance to tell, but it is kind of one of my favorites because it's just weird. This is something that happened at the North End that is called the Boston Molasses disaster of 1919. So, at the North End, that neighborhood where I told you to go get dinner, they had a very large vat of molasses in 1919. They had all of this molasses because there were 8 rum distilleries around the area that would use it to create rum. It was a warm day in January, and this vat had not been made very well, and it exploded. And 2.5 million gallons of molasses rode down Commercial Street, going 35 miles per hour. That's pretty fast for molasses, which, has a reputation for being pretty slow. It was a crazy, terrible disaster. It killed 22 people, over a dozen horses. It destroyed houses and homes. Awful tragedy. Weird that of all things it was molasses that did this massive damage. Some people claim on a hot day, you can still smell molasses at the North End because it's sunk into some of the original wood. So go to the North End, take a whiff, see if you can smell that molasses. You might just be smelling Mike's pastries, who knows. The day after it happened, the Boston Herald wrote about it. The Patriots didn't like it. Throwing ice, snowballs, rocks, and British soldiers fired into the crowd on impulse. There is speculation that one of those soldiers may have been hit by one of those rocks. His gun went off, all the other soldiers then firing into the crowd following him. The truth of the matter is, we're never really going to know exactly what happened on that day. There are many different personal accounts. A lot of them are really conflicting. The reason why it was so important to Boston history was because of the reaction. This was in every single newspaper. Every newspaper had a big bold headline.